Hey, this is David Plotz, CEO of CityCast. I have a favor to ask before we get to today's conversation. We're doing our annual listener survey, and it would really help us out if you took it. And even if you took it last year, we'd be grateful if you took it again, because we can't use last year's data. Please go to citycast.fm/survey to take the survey. It's only 7 minutes long, we know, because we timed it. That's citycast.fm/survey. And when you take the survey, you'll also be eligible to win a $250 Visa gift card and CityCast swag, that great CityCast swag. citycast.fm/survey.
Hey y'all, it's Nikki. I have to tell you about Tecovas boots. I finally have a pair and they're handmade, high quality, stylish, and comfortable. I even got them customized with leather stamping. The folks at Tecovas will help you find just the right pair. So swing by for yours at the Tecovas flagship on South Congress or their store at the Domain. Plus, good news, they just opened a new store in Georgetown at 709 Main Street for those of y'all that live a little further north. So come shop with me at Tecovas. That's TECOVAS.com. Don't go gently, y'all. Today on CityCast Austin, 3 new city council members, Mayor Kirk Watson's last term, and the Texas legislature is in session. City Council is about to ramp up. Their first meeting of 2025 is on Thursday. So what's going to happen this year at Austin City Hall? We're talking to an expert, Amy Stansberry of the Austin Common, to find out. It's Monday, January 27th. I'm Nikki Devon, and this is what Austin's talking about. Hello, I'm here today with Amy Stansberry, editor-in-chief over at the Austin Common. What is up, Amy? It is good to see you again.
Yeah, excited to talk city council.
So they have been on break. City council has been on break. But meanwhile, Austin has done some big things like reopened 6th Street to vehicles on the weekends. And we had this winter storm. How has the city been functioning without them for what seems like a long time? Does it matter if the council is in or not?
It's a good question. I mean, I think there is a kind of confusion point here. Yes, they haven't met, like they have not had a meeting where they vote on new rules and laws and stuff for a while, but they're still working generally. You know, the city is not super active between Christmas and New Year's, but otherwise, you know, some of them might go on vacation or take their own time off, but they're here. They're working for the most part. They're not voting on new things, but they're around. And then also the other big thing is that, you know, the way our city works is our city council and the mayor are really supposed to be in charge of policy, whereas the actual day-to-day running of the city is kind of more our professional city staff, so the city manager. So like in an emergency, it's really the job of the city manager to make sure all those cold weather shelters are working and we're operating them. The mayor gets pretty involved here too, but it is the city manager's job more.
Great distinction. I think that people forget that there are, you know, that our council is more on the policy end. So voters in November elected new city council members, and their first meeting is around the corner. Can we talk a little about who they are and how you think they're preparing?
Yeah, this is one of the bigger shifts or changes we've had in our city council for a while. So we had 2 of our longest serving city council members, Councilmember Allison Alter, who represents District 10, which is West Austin, and Councilmember Leslie Poole, who represents District 7, which is like North Central Austin. They both left. They kind of got term limited out, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not here anymore. So we've got 2 new folks replacing them. So in District 10, we have Mark Duchin. And in District 7, we have Mike Siegel. So they're both brand new council members, replacing those 2. And then in District 6, we had a bit of a shakeup. We had Councilmember Mackenzie Kelly, who was a former council member. She lost her race to Krista Lane.
Yeah.
And that one was noticeable because, you know, in Austin, technically, our city council is nonpartisan. So our candidates don't run officially as a Republican or Democrat. But you know what party they belong to. And so Councilmember Mackenzie Kelly, former council member, she was a Republican, the only Republican. So she got voted out and she was replaced by Krista Lane, who identifies with the Democratic Party.
That's a big deal. I mean, it shook me up for sure because I just thought for sure Mackenzie Kelly would be a shoe-in for her spot again.
And that's a district that really shifts back and forth a lot. Those elections in District 6 can be really different than some of the elections in different parts of the city. It's farther away from the central core, and it's more diverse politically than the rest of our city is. So you kind of never know what you might get out of District 6.
I like having a wild card. I'm not going to lie to you. I like it. I like it. So take us into City Hall. This time of year is kind of my favorite time of year because it's the time of like changing offices and moving around and like
vision boards, hopes are high.
Boards. Yeah, like the council members come in with new focus and energy and like ready to do some stuff. Like what is your lens of what's going on behind the scenes right now?
Yeah, so one thing is that we have a new mayor pro tem. So this is kind of a jargony term that people might not be aware of, but the mayor pro tem is just one of the council members. They're elected by their fellow council members each year, and they are kind of meant to be, they substitute for the mayor when the mayor's not there. It doesn't have a ton of technical powers or anything besides that they run the meeting when the mayor's absent, but it's a leadership role.
Yeah.
And so Vanessa Fuentes, council member for District 2, is our mayor pro tem for this year. And so she's really trying to, I think, lean into that leadership role. She's talked a lot about wanting to take action on homelessness, make that really one of her core focuses for the new year. She also is in charge of the city's public health committee, which already deals a lot with homelessness. So that's kind of a natural fit for her. And she's expressed a lot of interest in wanting to lean in on that. And then another big thing is a lot of the council members, this is a pretty active board and commission appointment time of year. So, So we've got some new council members in. They're going to be looking and thinking, who do I need to appoint to some of these board and commission seats? There's a lot of openings right now. A lot of board and commission terms kind of expire in the new year. So, and again, those are those resident advisory groups. They meet about once a month on all topics: parks, animals, music,
everything. Quality of life. Yeah.
Yes. But they get to advise city council directly on those issues. And so it's a really great opportunity to have a big impact on public policy. So if you've been thinking about it and been on the fence for a little while, like take a look because now's a good time. There's a lot of openings.
And also, to your point, it's a direct line to the council staff, like to city council. It is a lift. Definitely, for sure. The people that I know on boards and commissions say that it's a lift, but it's worthwhile. And if you're interested in what is happening in your district and you want to be involved, it's like the best way to do it. So to get elected or reelected, of course, city council members made voters certain pledges or promises or, talked about the things that they were at least prioritizing. So I'm curious, like, will they be able to keep these promises in general, you think?
Yeah. I mean, of course, you always have to figure out ways, especially at the local level. You're kind of the bottom rung. You have to listen to a lot of other political leaders sometimes. But I think our Austin officials are fairly used to this because they get a lot of pressure from the Texas legislature a lot. And there's always a lot of tension about what Austin City Council, which tends to be more liberal, and the Texas legislature, which tends to be more conservative. So I think they're used to this to a certain extent. The state has a big impact on us and the legislature is in session. And I'm sure that's something council will be keeping an eye on. So yes, like there are definite things that are always could limit council's ability to work on different things.
Yeah.
But I think they are fairly used to that always being a consideration at this point.
I love that. It's a very nice way of saying they are used to.
They're used to it, yes.
Them being in our business. That's essentially.
Yes, it is not new. Yeah, it's not coming out of nowhere.
So along those lines, like, what should we expect out of the city council this year? What do you think the biggest issues and challenges are that they're facing?
So we already talked about homelessness, but that's a constant one, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's one when I was interviewing and talking to candidates who were on the campaign trail, one of the number one issues that gets brought up. And so actually at their first council meeting, council is kind of poised to adopt a new 10-year plan to guide our homelessness response. It was created by ECHO, which is the community organization that kind of manages and helps to like coordinate all the different homeless organizations in our community. They put forward this plan, 10-year, $350 million plan, kind of lays out what they feel like is a good path for us to make some progress on this. It's expensive. It will require money, not just from the city, but from the county, probably private philanthropy. If the state or federal government wanted to chip in, I'm sure that money would be appreciated. We don't know where that money might come from. So council might approve this plan. Kind of the idea is like, we like this plan, but then the question will be, how do we actually do it? Who funds it? How do we fund it? And so that's going to be a big, big topic of conversation going into this year is how much should the city be funding? What parts should the city fund? What should nonprofits fund? What could we get philanthropy involved with? How could we involve more aspects of our community? City council has really been trying to, I think, emphasize this point that the problem is just so large. It is very difficult for the city to tackle on its own. And we haven't quite decided like what we want the city to be in charge of, what we want the county to be in charge of. It's kind of messy. So
Scattered,
so the plan, I think the idea behind the plan is trying to get us a little more organized. But then, we need to figure out how we're going to fund it, what our goals are, and try and get everyone in the community on board. That's a big task. But I think that's something you're going to see council talk a lot about this year.
Oh, I love it. It's also, I think that it seems now that there's movement on widening the highway, it's like, this is full effect. The traffic has already started getting out of control. The closures have already started.
Yes, transportation is going to be a big, big issue this year. That I-35 project, which is being run by the state primarily, but is definitely impacting us. The council's also going to have to make some really important decisions this year about whether or not we want those cap and stitch projects to go forward. So this is that idea, right, of like building the land bridges or even parks on top of parts of I-35. They got a presentation from city staff at the end of last year showing that that's going to be very expensive. Surprise, surprise.
Who would have thought?
And so now there's some tough choices that the city has to make. It seemed like earlier they were going to have to make the decision in 2024, but it seems like in March, the issue is probably going to come back before council and they're going to have to decide, are we going to do this whole big cap and stitch plan? Are we going to just build some? Are we going to ditch it all together? How will we fund it? It seems impossible almost to fund without some sort of tax leverage, increase or something. So that is going to be a big topic of conversation, both how do we adapt to when I-35 gets constructed on and just dealing with life during that time. And then also at the same time is our light rail plan.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the airport also is having really big construction projects.
And the airport.
So we've got a lot of big projects going on right now that need to be like stewarded just to making sure they are happening effectively and on time and as close to on budget as possible. But also just how do we live with that, right? Those will all be major construction projects. How do we adapt? I've heard Mayor Watson talk about wanting to, trying to work with companies and organizations in town to figure out, all right, how can we, during commutes to work, like how will we have to redirect traffic? Could we get some companies to agree to let their employees come at 9:10 and other at, whatever, just like try and there's going to have to be some coordination. Yeah. So that just logistical stuff I think is going to start to come up this year, but then also even in more years, these are big long-term projects.
Well, and you would also think that like now that we know that people can work from home efficiently and successfully, that should just be on the table in perpetuity. Like while this is happening, people should just be allowed to work from home. Like if you're looking for easy ways, to take some of the trouble out of the traffic.
That's been a hot topic of conversation at the city. The county has really leaned into working from home. The city, it's kind of gone back and forth as to people's opinions on that. And we're not quite in the throes of this hot construction yet. But when that happens, we'll have to see. It seems like there is maybe going to be some discussion about what we need to do to adapt to that, especially at I-35.
A mess.
Nobody's ever like, ooh, I can't wait for a major road reconstruction project.
There's no place like Texas, except when it comes to skiing. We know you're heading to seek snowier pastures this winter. Before you leave, grab one last taste of the real Texas in Amarillo. Hike, ride, or roll your way through the beauty of Palo Duro Canyon, the second largest canyon in the U.S., while your legs still feel fresh. Carbo load with that last taste of glorious Tex-Mex before you pivot to warm soups and chalet charcuterie. Or sneak into a speakeasy and enjoy a well-crafted cocktail before those shot skis get passed around. Amarillo is quirky and wild, Western, and spontaneous. You can spray paint a Cadillac, cruise Route 66, or find a cowgirl hat to complete the outfit that's been missing something. Whether we catch you on the way there or the way back, we can't wait to hear your stories and pour you a drink. The mountains may be calling, but Amarillo will make you proud to call Texas home. Visit Amarillo and après-ski into the real Texas.
Do you plan your vacations based on whether you can speak the local language? With Babbel, language no longer has to be the barrier. I'm David Plotz, the CEO of CityCast, and I went to Mexico City a couple of years ago with my girlfriend, who's a native Spanish speaker. So I just let her do all the talking, like all of it. I adored the city, and now I'm going to go back in a couple of months, but with my college roommates, who are a bunch of middle-aged men, none of us Spanish speakers. When I was younger, I might not have been bold enough to do that, but now I'm not anxious because Babbel has me covered. Thanks to Babbel, I know how to order a taxi, how to give directions, how to order in a restaurant, all the small and useful bits of language that make international travel easier. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons, handcrafted by over 200 language experts, get you to begin speaking your new language in 3 weeks or whatever pace you choose. And because conversing is the key to really understanding each other in a new language, Babbel is designed using practical, real-world conversations, especially the sort you need while traveling. Food, how to get places. Babbel's tips and tools are inspired by the real-life stuff you actually need when communicating. With a focus on conversation, you'll be ready to talk wherever you go. So I hope I'll see you in Mexico in a couple of months. Or, as we say, espero verte en Mexico en un par de meses. So let's get more of you talking in a new language. Babbel is gifting CityCast listeners 60% off subscriptions at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/CityCast. Spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Babbel.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
So you alluded to earlier, like one of the changes that we've seen now in this new city council is that we don't have a conservative voice on council currently. And so I'm curious, like from last year to this year, what other ways is city council different? How do you see that affecting the city as a whole?
Yeah, it's interesting because, obviously one conservative voice does not change the votes on anything, right? Like,
of course,
it's not a majority by any means, but sometimes having that person speaking up and talking can change council members in some way.
Yeah, and you're representing constituents still.
Exactly, yeah. So, one thing that council member Mackenzie Kelly, had all sorts of positions on different things. But one thing she was really leaning on was being fiscally conservative and trying to save money and really looking at the budget pretty tightly. Other council members obviously care about this too, but she was I would say a leader on that money front, definitely being aware of where our taxes going. Maybe we shouldn't be increasing our taxes every year, that kind of thing. That's a voice, a leading voice that might not be there. Another thing you kind of see is land use tends to be another area when we look at even an all Democratic city council. They have very different opinions about density and land use.
Yep. I think that's going to be huge this year.
That difference is still there, in some ways. So it's not as if because everyone is a Democrat that they all think the same thing about all issues. That's not the case, right? You have more nuance and differences on kind of some of these nitty gritty issues about what should happen in this neighborhood or that neighborhood. Those disagreements can still remain, right?
Right. And so let's talk about our newbies coming in. I call them newbies. I just mean new to the city.
They are newbies to city council.
Yeah. So what kind of differences do you think our new incoming council members will be bringing to, the dais?
The new council member for District 7, Mike Siegel, he, his experience and his background is really heavy in the environmental movement. So he's been a big climate advocate, really is big on green space and parks, and proposed some more liberal ideas on how to really lead with that. He really led his whole campaign around climate action. So I would expect to see from him a lot of push on climate.
Love that. Love it.
There's right now, if you're interested in climate issues, there is a bond advisory task force, which is one of those kind of boards or commission groups. So a group of residents that are thinking about, if we were to have a bond and we were to fund parks and climate infrastructure, what might those projects be? So that work is sort of ongoing right now and is something I think you'll hear a lot of discussions about over the upcoming year. It's something some council members push to have on our ballot in 2024. They weren't successful in that effort, but you're going to probably see that conversation happening. So that's definitely a big one there. Mark Duchin, who's the representative from District 10, pretty, I would say, politically aligned with Councilmember Allison Alter, who he's replacing. They both, I think, were weary of home and some of those land use code changes and criticized them. Mm-hmm. So they're pretty similar to each other there. So you'll probably see him continue to take up the mantle on some of those similar causes and concerns that Councilmember Alter had raised about increased development in certain neighborhoods. He also, in light of the LA wildfires, has really been pressing, and in his very first newsletter as a council member talked about wildfire prevention, what we need to be doing to make sure that we're prepared, because this could easily happen to us too, which was an issue that Councilmember Allison Alter also took up. And it seems like he's kind of taken the baton and also feels passionately about that area, especially in West Austin. It's an area that's very prone or more susceptible to those conditions. Yeah, so they're pretty similar there.
I am often looking for drama. So it's nice to know, that things will probably just move as is. So the former city council has had conflicts with the former city manager, as well as frustration and disagreement with the police department. So here we are now with a sort of new city manager and a new police chief, sort of new. How do you think the dynamics will look now? Because it feels kind of a bit like a clean slate.
I think the council members seem happy to have a clean slate. It seems like everyone is optimistic that perhaps with a whole bunch of new leadership, we can work together to address some of the issues that need addressing, and do that in a way that is effective and moves us forward. So I think there's a lot of hope that with a whole bunch of new people in office, we can fulfill on some of these promises, work on implementing the Office of Police Oversight Act. Training in the police academy is still a really lingering issue that hasn't really been resolved yet. So we have the contract, but we have a lot of other things that still need to be worked on. Even the 6th Street issue, like you mentioned, is one that I know the new police chief, even before what happened over the holidays, had been raising concerns over kind of security areas there. So 6th Street and security and the future of 6th Street, also something you're going to hear council talk a lot about this upcoming year.
Oh, yeah. I feel like Austin is in a place of like a pretty big place of transition right now, just overall in general. We're hearing things about rent going down, not as many people moving in as before. You got a new city council, we got a new city manager. Like, we are definitely in a place of transition. And so I'm curious. I find that when we're in places of transition, and also when it's at the beginning of the year, everybody kind of plays nice. When we start getting around budget time, things are maybe not so nice. And so I'm curious about, when do you think this lull will be over and we start getting down to just like the nitty gritty?
I don't think our council is extremely, extremely contentious or anything like that. But
No,
I do think
not at all.
that things start to heat up, honestly, the second they have their first meeting.
Really? Oh, I love this. I love this.
Just because decisions have to be made and things have to get done really quickly. That's the thing about city council is when they're not voting on stuff, when they have a meeting break, I feel like they have more time to talk about priorities and goals and big picture vision. When they have a council meeting every 2 weeks, like they are making choices on stuff quickly, and things start to move quick. One issue that's coming up right away is short-term rental regulations.
Oh, yeah.
So that's going to be one of the like hotter button issues that are going to come up before them to vote on, I think, in February already. If you live in Austin, you probably will be getting one of those purple postcards in the mail pretty soon telling you about upcoming land use changes. And they're going to have to make some choices about short-term rental regulations. This is one that they already tried to do this before. The courts have overturned it. They're pretty limited in what they're able to do, but they're trying to work through that a bit and figure out a way to still regulate short-term rentals in some capacity, collect taxes off of them, like hotels do, and then do it without getting in trouble by the state. So that is going to be I think kind of one of the juicier issues they'll vote on.
I like it. I like that you're saying they're going to get right into it. I love that.
They got to get into it. They got a lot to do.
They do have a lot to do, like out of the gate. They have a lot to do. So speaking of the meetings, are there any changes to rules of like public speaking or public involvement that folks should know about Austin City Council this year?
I mean, honestly, a lot of these things kind of are in flux often. They change certain things about the way meetings get run. There have been some court cases about if you're allowed to be reduced to 1 minute or if you can speak multiple times on different topics. That has been in flux for a bit. But in general, I still recommend for folks that if you've never been to a council meeting, I think go to one. Go to one of these earlier ones that are maybe a little less controversial. You don't even need to look at the agenda. Just show up one day. They're roughly every other Thursday, or, from the comfort of your own home, go to ATXN and you can live stream the video. But it is helpful to get a feel for, especially if you have a new council member and you're like, who is this person? What's their deal? Watch them for a little bit at a council meeting, and you can start to understand the dynamics between them, hear what issues they talk about. And that can help you better understand your council member or other council members. If there's one that you're like, oh yeah, I really relate to this person, like that might be the one you want to talk to.
I feel like a broken record because I say this every time we talk about city council, but I want to remind people that there are certain people that come to every single meeting, and those people are representing your district. So like if you want your voice to be heard, whether it is in opposition or in agreement with people, then it is really, really it's a good idea. Even if you don't want to come down, you can watch it just to know what's going on, just to know and have a point of reference to what's happening in your city. And also just, make your actual voice heard, because the people that come to every single meeting, they're going to make their voice heard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, I think that engagement is it's a big, big deal. I think we underestimate the necessity of engagement in local politics, specifically in city council.
Yeah, and a lot of them host town hall meetings, meet and greets, coffee, that kind of stuff in their neighborhoods. Those don't tend to have a lot of people at them at all. Yeah, you can really get some good FaceTime if you show up to a coffee with a council member or whatever and talk about whatever it is you care about. Sometimes they can be these big, weighty issues like wildfire preparedness or climate change, or it could be, this corner of my street, people keep dumping trash there. Like,
Exactly.
that drives me crazy. What can I do about that? Like, all those issues are important, and your council member can help you with those.
Oh my God, Amy, you're killing it. That's such a good thing to bring up. Your council members don't just handle huge issues. Like, they are also responsible for when somebody is dumping trash on your corner. Like they may not be able to fix it, but they can get to the people that can help you fix it. Thanks for reminding us of that. They are your voice in the city. So definitely engage. Definitely, they can't work magic, Let me be very clear.
Yeah.
They cannot come to your house and clean up trash on the corner, but they, they can make things happen. So is there anything else that we should know about Austin City Council that I didn't ask you? Is there anything else coming up that I didn't ask you about?
Keep an eye on what those folks are up to. I always, of course, encourage people to think about the city's budget. That does not happen until this summer. But if you're passionate about one particular issue, the boards and commissions have to submit their budget recommendations, I think, by the end of March. So that means that if you show up to a board or commission meeting on a topic you really care about, say it's like music or arts, you could go to that board or commission meeting maybe in February, maybe in March, share your thoughts and ideas. And this kind of time of year is like the idea time. If you're like, oh man, it would be cool if we had this, that's a good thing to share with boards of commissioners. When it gets to the summer, it's more like the ideas are already mostly on the board and you're selecting your preferences. This time of year, you can kind of maybe think about new thoughts.
I love that. You just made it so simple. Amy, thank you so much for being here.
I love it. I'll talk about city council all day long.
That's all for today here on CityCast Austin. You can find links to the Austin Common and Amy's social media in our show notes. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Austin newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye, y'all.